The town of Havenwood was just like its name, a safe and peaceful place where everyone knew each other. Kids rode their bikes down Main Street. Mrs. Gable always had cookies baking, and the biggest excitement was the annual pie-eating contest at the county fair. But in 2012, Havenwood's peace was shattered. Sarah, a bright and bubbly 17-year-old, vanished without a trace. Sarah was a ray of sunshine. She loved singing in the church choir, spending time with her friends, and dreaming about her future. She had a smile that could light up a room and a kind heart that touched everyone she met. That's why her disappearance was so shocking and heartbreaking. It happened on a Tuesday night. Sarah had stayed late for choir practice, perfecting a new song for the upcoming Christmas concert. As she walked home, the streetlights cast long shadows, and the air was crisp with the promise of fall. She waved to old Mr. Henderson watering his petunias on his porch, as she always did, and continued on her way. But she never made it home. The next morning, Sarah's parents woke up to find her bed empty. Panic set in quickly. They called her friends, her choir director, and even Mr. Henderson, but no one had seen her since the previous night. The word spread through Havenwood like wildfire. Soon, the whole town was out searching. Neighbors formed search parties, combing the woods, the fields, and the riverbanks. They put up posters with Sarah's smiling face on every telephone pole and storefront window. Even the local newspaper ran a front-page story, begging for anyone with information to come forward. But days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months, and still, there was no sign of Sarah. The police investigated, of course. They interviewed everyone who knew Sarah, searched her locker at school, and even brought in cadaver dogs to sniff for any trace of her scent. But the investigation hit dead end after dead end. There were no clues, no witnesses, and no leads. Eventually, the case went cold, leaving Havenwood with a gaping hole in its heart. The quiet town was no longer so quiet. A sense of unease settled over everything. People started locking their doors at night, and children were no longer allowed to play outside alone. The pie-eating contest didn't seem quite so fun anymore. Havenwood was forever changed by Sarah's disappearance. Before that Tuesday night, Sarah's life was full of promise. She wasn't just a girl who sang in the choir. She was the choir in many ways. Her soprano voice soared above the others, filling the old stone church with warmth and joy. Mrs. Davison, the choir director, often said Sarah had a gift, a voice that could touch people's souls. But Sarah wasn't just talented, she was kind. She always had a smile for everyone, even for grumpy old Mr. Abernathy, who always sat in the back row and complained about the music being too loud. She volunteered at the local animal shelter, caring for abandoned cats and dogs. And she tutored younger kids in math, patiently explaining fractions and equations until they finally understood. Her best friends were Emily and Jessica. The three of them were inseparable, sharing secrets, dreams, and endless laughter. They spent hours talking on the phone, planning their futures, and giggling over silly jokes. Emily was the artist, always sketching in her notebook. Jessica was the athlete, captain of the soccer team. And Sarah was the musician, her fingers dancing across the piano keys. They dreamed of going to college together, maybe even moving to a big city someday. Sarah wanted to study music, hoping to become a professional singer or a music teacher. She practiced every day, honing her skills and perfecting her voice. She even wrote her own songs, pouring her heart and soul into the lyrics. She loved her family, too. Her mom was a nurse, always caring for others. Her dad was a carpenter, building beautiful furniture with his own two hands. And she had a younger brother, Tom, who looked up to her with admiration. They were a close-knit family, always supporting each other and sharing meals together. Sarah had a boyfriend, too, named Michael. He was a year older than her and played guitar in a band. They had met at a school dance and quickly fallen in love. They spent hours listening to music together, walking hand in hand through the park and sharing their hopes and dreams. Michael admired Sarah's talent and her kind heart. He always encouraged her to pursue her dreams, telling her she could do anything she set her mind to. He gave her a silver heart necklace for her birthday, which she wore every day. It was a symbol of their love, a reminder that they would always be together. The Tuesday night Sarah disappeared started like any other. She woke up, ate breakfast with her family, and went to school. She aced her history test, laughed with her friends during lunch, and even managed to untangle a knot in Emily's favorite necklace. After school, she walked to the church for choir practice. That evening, the choir was working on Silent Night, a Christmas carol that Sarah loved. The notes flowed from her easily. Mrs. Davison kept asking them to repeat certain sections, wanting everything perfect for the upcoming Christmas Eve service. Sarah didn't mind. She loved singing, and she knew how important the music was to the community. As the practice went on, a storm began to brew outside. The wind howled, and rain lashed against the stained glass windows. The church, usually a place of peace and comfort, felt a little eerie. But Sarah wasn't scared. She was surrounded by her friends and the music she loved. Finally, Mrs. Davison dismissed the choir. It was later than usual because of the extra practice. Sarah gathered her music folder, waved goodbye to her friends, and stepped out into the stormy night. She pulled her jacket tighter around her and started walking home. The streetlights flickered in the wind, casting dancing shadows on the sidewalk. The trees swayed back and forth, their branches creaking like old bones. Sarah quickened her pace, eager to get home and curl up with a warm blanket. She passed Mr. Henderson's house, and he was outside, struggling to cover his petunias with a plastic sheet to protect them from the storm. She waved, and he waved back, a little surprised to see her out so late. That was the last time anyone saw Sarah. She walked down a dark stretch of road where there were no houses and no streetlights. The only sound was the wind and the rain. As she walked, she thought about Michael and their plans for the weekend. They were going to see a movie and then go out for pizza. She smiled, looking forward to spending time with him. But then, something happened. A shadow moved in the darkness. A sound broke through the wind and rain. And then, Sarah was gone. No one knows exactly what happened that night. There were no witnesses, no signs of struggle. She simply vanished, leaving behind only a mystery that would haunt Havenwood for years to come. The silver heart necklace Michael had given her, however, was later found on the road a few blocks away from the church. The chain was broken. The news of Sarah's disappearance spread through Havenwood like a chilling wind. The close-knit community was instantly united by grief and a shared determination to find her. It was as if Sarah was everyone's daughter, everyone's sister, everyone's friend. The day after she vanished, the town square was filled with people. Volunteers organized search parties, dividing into groups and assigning areas to cover. They trudged through muddy fields, calling Sarah's name, their voices hoarse with worry. They plastered posters with her smiling face everywhere they could, on telephone poles, store windows, even the church doors. Mrs. Gable, the baker, brought trays of cookies and sandwiches to the search parties, while Mr. Henderson, despite his age, walked with a cane, helping to clear brush in the wooded areas. Emily and Jessica, Sarah's best friends, were inconsolable, but they refused to stay home. They walked hand in hand, their eyes red and swollen, calling out for Sarah, clinging to the hope that she would hear them. Michael, Sarah's boyfriend, was a shadow of himself. He walked aimlessly, clutching the broken silver necklace in his hand. He couldn't eat, he couldn't sleep, he could only think about Sarah. He joined every search party, desperate to find any clue, any sign that she was still alive. The church became a gathering place, a sanctuary for those seeking comfort and hope. Reverend Johnson led prayers for Sarah's safe return, his voice filled with emotion. The choir, without Sarah's soaring soprano, sang hymns of hope and resilience. Even grumpy, old Mr. Abernathy showed up, his eyes filled with tears. The search continued day after day, week after week. The police brought in helicopters and search dogs, but they found nothing. The FBI joined the investigation, interviewing everyone in town, but they turned up no leads. As time went on, hope began to dwindle, but the people of Havenwood refused to give up. They organized fundraising events to support Sarah's family and to keep the search alive. They held candlelight vigils, their flames flickering in the darkness, a symbol of their unwavering hope. Havenwood was a town in mourning, but it was also a town united by love and a fierce determination to find Sarah and bring her home. The disappearance had shaken them to their core, but it had also revealed the strength and resilience of their community. From the moment Sarah was reported missing, the Havenwood Police Department launched a full-scale investigation. Sheriff Brody, a kind but stern man who had known Sarah since she was a little girl, took the case personally. He assembled a team of detectives and pored over every detail, every lead, every possible scenario. The police interviewed everyone who knew Sarah, her family, her friends, her teachers, her choir director, even Mr. Henderson, the last person to see her. They searched her locker at school, her bedroom at home, and her computer for any clues about her disappearance. They even brought in a psychic, hoping for a breakthrough, but nothing panned out. The detectives followed up on every tip, no matter how small or insignificant it seemed. They investigated rumors of a strange car scene near the church on the night Sarah disappeared. They checked out reports of a suspicious man lurking in the woods. But each lead led to a dead end. They analyzed Sarah's phone records, her social media accounts, and her emails, searching for any indication of trouble or any hint of where she might have gone. But everything seemed normal. Sarah was a happy, well-adjusted teenager with no known enemies and no apparent reason to run away. The police conducted several polygraph tests, including Sarah's close friends and family members, but the results were inconclusive. There were no obvious signs of deception, but the detectives couldn't rule anyone out. As the weeks turned into months, the investigation grew increasingly frustrating. The police had exhausted every lead, every resource, and every angle. They had interviewed hundreds of people, searched countless locations, and analyzed every piece of evidence. But they were no closer to finding Sarah than they were on the first day. The case began to take a toll on Sheriff Brody and his team. They worked tirelessly, sacrificing their sleep, their meals, and their time with their families. But they couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something, that there was a crucial piece of the puzzle that they just couldn't find. Eventually, the investigation stalled. The police had run out of leads, and the case went cold. The files were stored away in a dusty cabinet, but Sheriff Brody never forgot about Sarah. He kept the case open, hoping that one day a new clue would emerge, and he would finally be able to bring her home. He knew in his heart that someone in Havenwood knew something, and he was determined to find out the truth, no matter how long it took. Years passed, and Havenwood slowly began to heal, but the scar of Sarah's disappearance never fully faded. The town moved on, but Sarah was never forgotten. Her picture remained on the town's website, a constant reminder of the young life that had been tragically cut short. Emily and Jessica, Sarah's best friends, went away to college, but they always came back to Havenwood for the holidays. They would visit Sarah's parents, sharing memories and keeping her spirit alive. They both became successful in their chosen fields, Emily as a graphic designer and Jessica as a physical therapist, but they always felt a sense of emptiness, a void that could never be filled. Michael, Sarah's boyfriend, never really recovered from her disappearance. He tried to move on, but he couldn't bring himself to love anyone else. He kept the broken silver necklace in a small box, a reminder of the girl he had lost. He left Havenwood and traveled the world, searching for peace and solace, but he never found it. He eventually returned to Havenwood, working as a handyman and living a quiet, solitary life. Sarah's parents never gave up hope that one day they would find out what happened to their daughter. They visited her grave every day, tending to the flowers and talking to her as if she were still there. They kept her room exactly as she had left it, a shrine to her memory. They aged, their faces etched with grief, but their love for Sarah never wavered. Sheriff Brody retired, but he never stopped thinking about Sarah's case. He would often visit the old police station, poring over the files, searching for any detail he might have missed. He carried the weight of the unsolved case with him, a constant reminder of his failure to bring Sarah home. Havenwood changed over the years. New businesses opened, new families moved in, and new generations grew up. But Sarah's story was always passed down, a cautionary tale about the fragility of life and the importance of community. The town held a memorial service for Sarah every year on the anniversary of her disappearance. People gathered at the church, lighting candles and sharing memories of the girl who had touched so many lives. Even grumpy old Mr. Abernathy attended every service, his eyes filled with tears. Life went on, but Sarah was never forgotten. She remained a part of Havenwood's history, a symbol of innocence lost and a reminder of the enduring power of hope. The mystery of her disappearance lingered, a dark cloud hanging over the town, waiting for the day when the truth would finally be revealed. 11 years after Sarah's disappearance, the old stone church was showing its age. The basement, in particular, was in desperate need of repair. The foundation was crumbling, the walls were damp, and the support beams were starting to rot. The church elders decided it was time to hire a construction crew to fix the structural problems before it was too late. The construction crew, led by a gruff but honest foreman named Frank, arrived in Havenwood on a Monday morning. They set up their equipment, inspected the basement, and began the tedious task of reinforcing the foundation. It was dirty, backbreaking work, but Frank and his crew were used to it. As they were working, they noticed something odd about one of the walls. It sounded hollow when they tapped on it, unlike the other walls, which were solid stone. Frank, curious, decided to investigate further. He instructed his crew to carefully remove some of the stones, revealing a hidden space behind the wall. It was a small, rectangular room, sealed off by a makeshift wall of rotting shelves. The shelves were filled with old boxes, dusty books, and forgotten relics. The air in the room was thick with the smell of mildew and decay. Frank, intrigued, cautiously entered the hidden room, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. As he swept the beam around the room, he noticed something lying on the floor, half buried under dust and debris. It was a faded blue folder with the words Havenwood Church Choir printed on the front. Frank picked up the folder, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew instantly what it was. He carefully opened the folder, revealing sheet music for Silent Night, the Christmas carol that Sarah had been practicing on the night she disappeared. He flipped through the pages, his hands trembling. And then he saw it. A name written in neat, cursive handwriting, Sarah Miller. Frank gasped, his mind racing. He knew he had stumbled upon something significant, something that could finally solve the mystery of Sarah's disappearance. He carefully placed the folder back on the floor and backed out of the hidden room, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew he had to call the police. He knew he had to tell them what he had found. He knew that after 11 long years, the truth about Sarah's disappearance was finally about to be revealed. He just hoped he was ready for what that truth might be. He also found a pair of broken glasses and some other debris. The hidden room was small, no bigger than a large closet. The walls were made of rough-hewn stone, the same as the rest of the church basement, but they were damp and stained with mildew. The air was heavy with the smell of dust, decay, and something else, something indefinable, something unsettling. Sunlight couldn't reach this forgotten space. Frank's flashlight beam was the only source of illumination. It danced across the room, revealing its secrets one by one. The rotting shelves that had once concealed the entrance were now collapsing, their contents spilling onto the floor. Among the scattered debris, Frank saw old books with tattered covers, yellowed newspapers with faded headlines, and broken toys that must have belonged to children who had long since grown up. There were also several old boxes filled with personal belongings, letters, photographs, and keepsakes, remnants of lives lived and forgotten. But it was Sarah's belongings that stood out most. Her choir folder was faded and worn, but the blue color was still visible. The sheet music inside was yellowed and brittle, but the notes were still legible. It was as if Sarah herself had just stepped away from the folder, leaving it behind for a moment. The broken glasses were another chilling discovery. They were Sarah's glasses. She had worn them since she was in middle school. They were lying on the floor, the lenses shattered, the frames bent and twisted. It was clear that they had been broken in a struggle. Mixed in with Sarah's things were other objects that didn't seem to belong. A tarnished silver locket, its clasp broken. A small wooden carving of a bird, its wings snapped off. In a single, dried red rose, its petals crumbled and faded. These items were like puzzle pieces, hinting at a story, a dark and tragic story that had been hidden for 11 long years. Frank felt a chill run down his spine. He knew that this hidden room was more than just a storage space. It was a tomb, a repository of secrets, a place where the past refused to stay buried. He knew that finding this room would change everything. It would reopen old wounds, stir up old memories, and force the people of Havenwood to confront the darkness that had been lurking beneath the surface for so long. He just hoped they were ready for what they were about to discover. The red rose seemed especially significant. What did it mean? And who else had access to this hidden room? Frank's call to the Havenwood Police Department was brief and to the point. He told them about the hidden room, about Sarah's choir folder, and about the broken glasses. He didn't go into detail, but he made it clear that he believed he had found something important, something that could finally break the Sarah Miller case. The dispatcher, a young woman who had grown up hearing stories about Sarah's disappearance, immediately recognized the significance of Frank's call. She alerted Sheriff Lewis, Sheriff Brody's replacement, who was just as determined to solve the case as his predecessor had been. Sheriff Lewis arrived at the church within minutes, sirens blaring, lights flashing. He quickly assessed the situation, cordoning off the area and ordering his deputies to secure the scene. He then approached Frank, his face grim. "Show me," he said, his voice low and serious. Frank led Sheriff Lewis to the hidden room, carefully stepping over the debris and pointing out the key items: Sarah's choir folder, the broken glasses, the tarnished locket, the wooden bird, and the dried red rose. Sheriff Lewis examined each item closely, his eyes narrowing. "This is definitely Sarah's handwriting," he said, pointing to the name on the choir folder. "And these are definitely her glasses. I remember her wearing them." The discovery sent a jolt of energy through the Havenwood Police Department. The cold case was suddenly hot again. Detectives pored over the old files, re-examining every piece of evidence, re-interviewing every witness. The town buzzed with rumors and speculation. Sheriff Lewis contacted the state crime lab, requesting a team of forensic experts to examine the hidden room and its contents. The experts arrived the next day, meticulously collecting evidence, dusting for fingerprints, and analyzing the soil samples. The discovery of Sarah's belongings in the hidden room was enough to reopen the case. The district attorney agreed there was now sufficient evidence to warrant a new investigation. The news spread quickly through Havenwood, reigniting old wounds and stirring up long-dormant emotions. Sarah's parents, Emily and Jessica, and Michael were notified. They were told only that some of Sarah's belongings had been discovered. The town held its breath, waiting for answers, hoping for closure. After 11 long years, the truth about Sarah's disappearance was finally within reach. But no one knew what that truth would be or what it would mean for the town of Havenwood. The forensic team worked meticulously, carefully documenting every item in the hidden room, bagging and tagging each piece of evidence. They dusted for fingerprints, collected soil samples, and analyzed the air for any trace of DNA. The process was slow and painstaking, but Sheriff Lewis insisted on thoroughness. He knew that the smallest detail could be the key to unlocking the mystery of Sarah's disappearance. As the forensic team worked, Sheriff Lewis and his detectives began re-interviewing the people who had been involved in the original investigation. They started with Sarah's family and friends, asking them to recount their memories of that fateful night 11 years ago. They spoke with Sarah's parents, who were both aged and frail but still fiercely determined to find out what happened to their daughter. They spoke with Emily and Jessica, who were now successful professionals but still haunted by the loss of their best friend. And they spoke with Michael, who had returned to Havenwood after years of wandering, his heart still broken. The detectives also re-interviewed Mrs. Davison, the choir director, who was now retired but still remembered Sarah fondly. They spoke with Mr. Henderson, who was now even older and more frail, but still insisted that he was the last person to see Sarah alive. But this time, the detectives asked different questions. They focused on the details of Sarah's life, her relationships, her habits, and her secrets. They probed for any inconsistencies, any hidden agendas, any possible motives. As the interviews progressed, a pattern began to emerge. Several people mentioned that Sarah had been having problems with someone in the church choir. This person, they said, was jealous of Sarah's talent and had been spreading rumors about her. The detectives also learned that Sarah had been secretly dating someone else, someone other than Michael. This person, they said, was an older man, a prominent member of the church. The man was known for his stern demeanor and his strict adherence to the rules. Sheriff Lewis felt a sense of unease growing within him. The evidence was starting to point in a disturbing direction. It was becoming increasingly clear that Sarah's disappearance was not the result of a random act of violence, but rather the result of a carefully planned crime committed by someone within the church walls. The idea that someone in the church could be involved was shocking to everyone. This was a place of worship and community, a safe haven. How could such a thing happen here? The investigation took a dark turn. Suspicion fell upon those closest to Sarah. The secrets of Havenwood were about to be exposed. Suspicion settled heavily on two individuals within the church. The first was Deborah, a woman in her late 30s who had been a member of the choir for many years. Deborah possessed a powerful voice, but she had always lived in Sarah's shadow. Sarah's talent seemed effortless, while Deborah had to work tirelessly to achieve the same level of performance. Witnesses from the choir stated that Deborah had become increasingly resentful of Sarah in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. She made snide remarks about Sarah's talent and accused her of showing off. Some even claimed that Deborah had been spreading rumors about Sarah, trying to undermine her reputation. The second person of interest was Mr. Abernathy, the grumpy old man who always sat in the back row of the church. Mr. Abernathy was a pillar of the community, a respected businessman, and a devout member of the church. He was known for his strict moral code and his unwavering adherence to the rules. However, the detectives learned that Mr. Abernathy had taken a special interest in Sarah. He often praised her talent and offered her unsolicited advice. Some even claimed that he had been seen giving Sarah gifts, including a silver locket that matched the description of the one found in the hidden room. When questioned, Deborah denied any involvement in Sarah's disappearance. She admitted that she had been jealous of Sarah's talent, but she insisted that she would never do anything to harm her. Mr. Abernathy also denied any wrongdoing. He claimed that he had only been trying to help Sarah, that he saw her as a promising young talent who needed guidance. He denied giving her any gifts, claiming that he barely knew her. However, the detectives noticed inconsistencies in both Deborah's and Mr. Abernathy's stories. Deborah seemed nervous and evasive, while Mr. Abernathy appeared to be hiding something. Sheriff Lewis knew that he needed more evidence before he could make an arrest. He ordered his detectives to conduct a thorough background check on both Deborah and Mr. Abernathy, searching for any past crimes, any hidden secrets, any possible motives. The detectives also obtained warrants to search Deborah's and Mr. Abernathy's homes, hoping to find any evidence that could link them to Sarah's disappearance. The search was about to begin. What secrets would their homes reveal? And would those secrets finally solve the mystery of Sarah Miller? The tarnished silver locket found in the hidden room suddenly seemed very significant. Had Mr. Abernathy lied about giving Sarah gifts? As detectives prepared to search Deborah's and Mr. Abernathy's homes, they also revisited other potential suspects. Mrs. Davison, the choir director, was known for her stern demeanor and her demanding teaching style. Some former choir members claimed that she could be harsh and unforgiving, especially towards those who didn't meet her high standards. While Mrs. Davison seemed genuinely saddened by Sarah's disappearance, detectives noted that she seemed unusually concerned about the church's reputation. She repeatedly emphasized that the church was a safe and sacred place, and she seemed anxious to distance herself and the church from any wrongdoing. Another person of interest was Walter, the church janitor. Walter was a quiet, unassuming man who had worked at the church for many years. He was often seen sweeping the floors, cleaning the windows, and tending to the grounds. He kept to himself and rarely spoke to anyone. However, Detectives learned that Walter had a troubled past. He had a history of mental illness and had spent time in a psychiatric hospital. He also had a fascination with young girls, according to some neighbors. When questioned, Walter was nervous and fidgety. He claimed that he barely knew Sarah and that he had nothing to do with her disappearance. However, detectives noticed that his hands were shaking and that he kept avoiding eye contact. The search warrants were executed simultaneously. At Deborah's house, detectives found several journals filled with angry and resentful entries about Sarah. They also found a collection of newspaper clippings about Sarah's disappearance, carefully preserved and organized. At Mr. Abernathy's house, detectives found a hidden room in the basement filled with photographs of young girls, including several of Sarah. They also found a locked box containing a large sum of money and a handwritten note that read, "I couldn't help myself." The evidence was mounting, pointing to a disturbing truth. Sarah's disappearance was not a random act of violence, but rather the result of a carefully planned crime, committed by someone within the church walls, someone who had been hiding a dark secret for 11 long years. The list of suspects had just grown longer, and the secrets were getting darker. The quiet janitor and the stern choir director now seemed more suspicious than ever. What would the forensic evidence reveal? The evidence found in Deborah's and Mr. Abernathy's homes led to intense interrogations. Sheriff Lewis and his detectives questioned them separately, using a combination of gentle persuasion and aggressive tactics. Deborah, confronted with her angry journal entries and the meticulously organized newspaper clippings, finally broke down. She admitted that she had been jealous of Sarah's talent and that she had spread rumors about her. However, she insisted that she had nothing to do with Sarah's disappearance. She claimed that on the night Sarah vanished, she had gone straight home after choir practice and had spent the evening alone, watching television. She couldn't provide any alibi, and she refused to take a polygraph test. Mr. Abernathy, confronted with the photographs of young girls in his basement and the handwritten note that read, "I couldn't help myself," remained stoic and defiant. He claimed that the photographs were harmless and that the note was taken out of context. He admitted that he had taken a special interest in Sarah, but he insisted that his intentions were pure. He claimed that he had only wanted to help her, that he saw her as a promising young talent who needed guidance. However, detectives discovered that Mr. Abernathy had lied about his whereabouts on the night Sarah disappeared. He claimed that he had been at home, reading a book, but his wife, who had been out of town that night, told detectives that he often went for late-night walks. The detectives also questioned Mrs. Davison, the choir director, and Walter, the church janitor. Mrs. Davison maintained her innocence, but she seemed increasingly nervous and agitated. She kept repeating that the church was a safe and sacred place, and that she couldn't believe that someone within the church could be responsible for Sarah's disappearance. Walter, on the other hand, became increasingly withdrawn and uncommunicative. He refused to answer any questions, and he asked for a lawyer. As the interrogations continued, the forensic team released their initial findings. They had found traces of Sarah's DNA in Mr. Abernathy's car, as well as fibers from her jacket. They had also found fingerprints on the choir folder that matched Mr. Abernathy's. The evidence was overwhelming. Sheriff Lewis knew that he had finally found his man. He ordered his detectives to arrest Mr. Abernathy for the murder of Sarah Miller. The town of Havenwood was in shock. Could this pillar of the community really be a killer? The secrets were finally coming to light, and the truth was more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. But what was the motive? And where was Sarah's body? Despite the overwhelming evidence, Mr. Abernathy refused to confess. He maintained his innocence, claiming that he had been framed. Sheriff Lewis knew that he needed to find Sarah's body to secure a conviction. He ordered his detectives to conduct a massive search of Mr. Abernathy's property, including the woods surrounding his house. Days turned into weeks, and still, there was no sign of Sarah's body. The town of Havenwood held its breath, waiting for news, hoping for closure. Then, one day, a break in the case came from an unexpected source. Walter, the church janitor, who had been silent and withdrawn since the investigation began, suddenly asked to speak with Sheriff Lewis. Walter confessed that he had witnessed Mr. Abernathy killing Sarah. He claimed that on the night of her disappearance, he had been working late at the church, cleaning up after choir practice. He saw Sarah and Mr. Abernathy arguing in the basement. He said that Mr. Abernathy had become angry and had struck Sarah, knocking her to the ground. He then dragged her into the hidden room and locked the door. Walter said he was too afraid to intervene, fearing for his own life. He kept the secret for 11 years, tormented by guilt and fear. But when he learned that Mr. Abernathy had been arrested, he decided that he could no longer remain silent. He knew he had to tell the truth, even if it meant risking his own safety. Walter's confession led Sheriff Lewis to search the hidden room again. This time, they found a loose stone in the floor. Beneath the stone, they found Sarah's body, buried in a shallow grave. The discovery of Sarah's body confirmed Walter's confession and sealed Mr. Abernathy's fate. He was charged with first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. The truth about Sarah's disappearance was finally revealed. Mr. Abernathy, a respected member of the community, had been secretly obsessed with Sarah. He had been grooming her for months, showering her with gifts and attention. But when she rejected his advances, he became enraged and killed her. He was a wolf in sheep's clothing. The town of Havenwood was devastated by the news. They couldn't believe that someone they had trusted for so long could be capable of such a heinous crime. The church, once a symbol of peace and community, was now tainted by the stain of murder. The dried red rose found in the hidden room was a symbol of Mr. Abernathy's twisted obsession. It was a rose he had given to Sarah on the night she died. The motive behind Mr. Abernathy's crime was a twisted mix of obsession and control. He had seen Sarah as an innocent, pure creature, someone he could mold and shape to fit his own desires. He believed that he was doing her a favor by showering her with attention and gifts, that he was guiding her towards a better future. But Sarah didn't want his guidance. She was happy with her life, with her friends, with her boyfriend. She saw Mr. Abernathy as a kind old man, nothing more. She politely declined his gifts and avoided his company whenever possible. Mr. Abernathy couldn't accept her rejection. He saw it as a personal insult, a betrayal of his generosity. He became increasingly possessive and controlling, demanding more and more of Sarah's time and attention. On the night of her disappearance, Mr. Abernathy confronted Sarah in the church basement. He accused her of being ungrateful and disloyal. He demanded that she break up with her boyfriend and devote herself to him. Sarah refused. She told him that she didn't love him, that she never would. She said that he was a sick and twisted man who needed help. Her words sent Mr. Abernathy into a rage. He lost control, striking her and dragging her into the hidden room. He locked the door, intending to keep her there until she changed her mind. But Sarah wouldn't give in. She fought him, scratching and biting, determined to escape. In his rage, Mr. Abernathy silenced her forever. Afterwards, he was consumed by guilt and fear. He knew that he had committed a terrible crime, one that could destroy his life. He buried Sarah's body in the hidden room, hoping that it would never be found. He tried to resume his normal life, but he was haunted by the memory of what he had done. He became increasingly withdrawn and isolated, consumed by paranoia and regret. The silver locket that he had given Sarah, the one found in the hidden room, was a symbol of his obsession. It was a token of his affection, a reminder of the girl he had lost. The dried red rose was a symbol of his rage and his regret. It was a rose he had given to Sarah on the night he killed her, a final gesture of his twisted love. He thought that the money he had locked away would help him escape if he was ever caught, but in the end, it couldn't save him from his own dark secret. Mr. Abernathy's arrest sent shockwaves through Havenwood. The news spread like wildfire, leaving residents reeling in disbelief. He was a pillar of the community, a respected businessman, a devout member of the church. How could he be a murderer? The town was divided. Some refused to believe that Mr. Abernathy was guilty, clinging to the image of the kind old man they had known for so long. Others were filled with anger and resentment, feeling betrayed by someone they had trusted. Sarah's parents were devastated. After 11 long years of uncertainty, they finally knew the truth about what had happened to their daughter. but the knowledge brought them little comfort. Their grief was as raw and painful as it had been on the day she disappeared. Emily and Jessica, Sarah's best friends, were heartbroken. They had always held out hope that Sarah was still alive, that one day she would come back to them. Now, they knew that she was gone forever, and that her life had been cruelly taken by someone they had known and trusted. Michael, Sarah's boyfriend, was consumed by rage. He wanted to lash out, to hurt Mr. Abernathy as much as he had hurt Sarah. But he knew that violence wouldn't bring her back. He found solace in the support of his friends and family, and in the knowledge that justice would be served. The trial was a media circus. Reporters from all over the country descended on Havenwood, eager to cover the story of the small town that had been rocked by a shocking crime. The courtroom was packed every day, filled with residents eager to witness the proceedings. Mr. Abernathy pleaded not guilty, claiming that he had been framed. But the evidence against him was overwhelming. Walter's testimony, the forensic evidence, the hidden room, all pointed to his guilt. The jury deliberated for only a few hours before reaching a verdict. They found Mr. Abernathy guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison, without the possibility of parole. Justice had finally been served for Sarah Miller. But the scars of her disappearance would remain on Havenwood forever. The town had lost its innocence, and it would never be the same again. Still, there was a sense of closure, a feeling that Sarah could finally rest in peace. The people of Havenwood could finally begin to heal. The horror was finally over. In the years that followed Mr. Abernathy's conviction, Havenwood slowly began to rebuild. The church, once tainted by darkness, was renovated and rededicated, becoming a symbol of hope and healing. The hidden room was sealed off, its secrets forever buried. Sarah's parents established a foundation in her name, providing scholarships for talented young musicians. They wanted to ensure that Sarah's dream of becoming a professional singer would live on through others. Emily and Jessica, Sarah's best friends, remained close, supporting each other through their grief and celebrating Sarah's memory. They organized a yearly concert in her honor, featuring local musicians and raising money for the foundation. Michael, Sarah's boyfriend, found peace in helping others. He became a volunteer counselor, working with young people who had experienced loss and trauma. He shared his story with them, offering hope and guidance. The town of Havenwood chose to remember Sarah not for the way she died, but for the way she lived. They remembered her infectious smile, her kind heart, and her beautiful voice. They remembered her talent, her passion, and her dreams. They planted a memorial garden in the town square, filled with Sarah's favorite flowers. They erected a statue of her, depicting her singing, her face radiant with joy. They renamed the town's music hall in her honor, ensuring that her name would live on for generations to come. Every year, on the anniversary of her disappearance, the town held a memorial service, not of sadness, but of celebration. People gathered at the music hall, lighting candles and sharing memories of Sarah. The choir sang her favorite songs, their voices filling the hall with warmth and love. Even grumpy old Mr. Henderson attended every service, his eyes